Start streaming. Is Punt a mythical place?
What?
Is that last week's? Is Punt?
Not even last week's, not even close. Hang on a second.
What's going on?
Alright, we're back on.
Oh, he's ended.
The other boys are coming out now. Everything's coming out. Hang on.
Oh, it's live.
We are live, are we?
But it's got the picture of the Punt thing.
Alright, well, I'll change all that. I don't know what's going on here.
And now
Anyway.
it's called King Arthu Live.
King Arthu alive. There we go.
King Arthu Live.
Yeah, another new spelling.
What happened?
I don't know what happened. Everything's working fine. My end. Everything's looking good. I'm just giving people a chance to log back in again.
Why are you logging back in? I thought you were live. Yeah, but he ended it because it was just crap.
Thanks, everyone's just going to join in for a chat now, are they? We're going to do the programme. What do you think?
Away. Shoot.
That's all right. You can just join in if you want. Everyone's come to have a little chat to see what's going on. Right. Are you logged back in again? Are you on?
Yeah, I'm logged on.
Okay, let's give everyone a chance to catch up a minute. Because it was going so well, and then for some reason, I don't know, sound and stuff didn't work. And there's some really good stuff I want to get onto. So I'm going to push on. And if you want to watch it again some other time, hello to everybody. I'm going to push straight on. People hopefully will hear this bit. So we're just talking about King Arthur.
Oh, people are logging on quite quickly.
Ah, good. Yeah, people getting used to these disasters. Right, okay, so what I want to talk about there.
Minimum lag.
Minimum lag. Oh, it's working great now. I've gone to ultra low
Like
latency. It's all working brilliantly. It's like the DVD extra. Here we go. Extra, yes. Right, okay, so what we were saying is there that Arthur was crowned by Dubricius, who, I'm taking this, people who didn't watch the other half. This is from the book The Story of Gwent, which is a school textbook. 1925, so presumably it stayed in the schools a bit longer than that, by David W. Oates. And it's their school history and geography of Monmouthshire, okay? And we've gone through all the early Christianity, how that seems to have started very much around Gwent, and the whole thing about Paul and Craddock, and Linus being the first bishop. So what we're doing then is Arthur, what we're saying here on page 62, well, Dubricius, the Archbishop of Caerleon, the chiefs of Britain, came to him and proposed that he should crown Arthur as their war king, to lead him in their struggle against the Saxons. Alright? The splendour of the scene when the Archbishop placed the crown upon the head of the young king is described in another chapter. The key here, I think, is he's chosen as the war king, not necessarily as the high king, which presumably would still have been his father, Myrig, who was still alive, although possibly injured. We then on to Gwynllew, and then we got a whole chapter in this book about King Arthur, chapter 10, and it talks there about the wars he fought. Shall I just read that last little bit again? Because I'm not sure how much of it came out, really. I'll just do the key points. The key point here: the exaggerated tales which Geoffrey of Monmouth related to the hero king have cast an air of fable over his real exploits. In the centuries that have passed since Geoffrey wrote his book, writers of many nations have woven so much mystery into the wonderful stories he related, that it is now very difficult to separate Arthur from the legends that have grown up around his name. They are not, however, without foundation, and we must endeavour to remove the romance which has sprung up around the reality in the story of the hero king as it's been handed down to us. So the point to make in this book, there was a real historic king. We've got details of him. I won't go through the battles again. Details of battles. We've got the story, his wife Guinevere, as it's spelt here. How she was kicked into touch. All that stuff. Modred, the Civil War. How sad Arthur was. A king fighting against his people is someone fighting against himself. That's the historical Arthur. South Wales, King of Glamorgan and Gwent, or at least the King of Gwent in this book. And all the fantastical stuff which has come on. Thanks for coming back on, everyone, again. Hopefully it's working better now. Not really sure what happened there. Very strange. So anyway, right, so we're coming on then. Oh, this surprised me, is the contacts then between Alfred of the Saxons, or was he a Saxon? Was he a Guise? But that's another story. Alfred started interfering with Welsh politics. He's called in as an arbiter. But then those things went badly. What you have then is that there was a while, it says here, at the close of the 10th century, we begin to catch glimpses of a kinder, more friendly feeling and a growing intercourse between the Welsh and the Saxons, which was an inevitable result of a common foe in the Danes and a now common religion. Now, I have a funny feeling this is a little bit mixed up here, and it's an idea you might want to think about, is that the Gwysai, which are always shown on maps of that period as a separate people, the Gwysai, Alfred was from the Gwysai, and they were much more in contact with the British, and they would have had ancient connections going way, way, way back. The Gwysai being an ancient arrival in Britain as well. Maybe from time with Somerset, and ties in with that area. And then the new threat with the Danes and the Angles and the more Germanic tribes would have united them to fight this sort of common foe. But we are going to do it 1925 style, and those ideas weren't really around then. But one of the things is, there's some great battles in here. That's the other thing. It's much more exciting history than a lot of what's taught these days. Right, so in the Welsh records, the Northmen are called the Black Pagans, probably on account of their dark boats and clothing, together with the fact that they hated Christianity and loved nothing better than to spoil churches and monasteries and burn them to the ground. There was a prayer at the time, "Deliver us, O Lord, from the fury of the Northmen." In 891, the Danes again landed in Wales, and after plundering and burning Llantyt Major, or Llanilltyd Fawr, and Llancarvan, advanced towards Gwent. One of the princes in Gwent at this period was Morgan Hen, which probably means the old one. He'd probably been around a long time. Hearing of the advance of the Black Pagans, he made all preparations for encountering them and defending his domain against their ruthless attack. The two forces met below Caerleon, and the bravery of the men of Gwent prevailed against the Danes so that they were forced to put to sea and sail for Ireland. And his other great battles with the pirates and the Danes, and it's some wonderful stuff. And they're the fury of the men of Gwent. And if you ever had a quiet night out in Newport, you'll see that they kept that tradition going there. So it was fascinating. Then, of course, they found a boat, a timber boat from ancient times, in Alexandra Dock, Newport, in April 1878. An ancient vessel several feet below the surface of the soil. The vessel appears to have been about 70 feet long, made for speed rather than strength, and it was only slightly put together. So that's curious to me. If it's for speed rather than strength, it wouldn't be much good for going across the North Sea, and it's more likely to be a local boat. But anyway, an old chronicle is recorded in the year 893, an invasion and warfare with the Danes took place on this spot. They were driven over the Bristol Channel in their ships, and it's more than probable that this ship was left by them in their haste to escape. Okay. So all that stuff. Right, I'm going to crack on now. So we've got the Kings of Gwent. All right, that's the next bit of my notes there. Right, 101, where am I? Right, I'm going to move on now to the Princes of Gwent, as they call here, the Kings of Gwent, and their ancient claim. This is the point here, when it got to this stage, the King of Gwent, Eithon by name, suddenly took the notion of making all Wales pay its taxes to the King of Gwent. This is new to me. In other words, he set about making himself chief king of Wales. This was the beginning of long wars and wild battles for Gwent. Now, isn't it interesting that this happened, and this is round about, roughly about 1000 AD, because this goes back then to the earlier times when you had the High King in southeast Wales, and the rest of Wales paying tribute to them. Yep. Oh, Rob Shaw's on. Good. Yep. Amazing book is going off to printers. So Rhyddach, son of Iestyn and nephew of Eithon, took up the task. In the year 1021, he made himself king of all South Wales as well as Gwent. Then for 10 years he ruled in strength and wisdom, challenged only once when the brother of Llywel ap Saesel came down to make him yield. And then he got all these battles in South Wales then. And then this is when Griffith, son of Llywelyn ap Saesel, made himself king of Gwynedd, and from that he set himself to be king of Wales. So then you have this series of battles going back and forth. And the curious thing is, you get Harold and Tostig. They come to Wales, and they take sides in the Welsh wars. So you have the men of Gwent actually fighting with Harold at one point against the men of Gwynedd. And the recurring theme throughout this book is the Welsh being their own worst enemies and fighting each other rather than uniting against a common foe, whether that be the Danes or Harold or whichever one it is, okay? Then we have the idea of what I want to jump forward to is when the Normans arrive. Because this is, again, massively, I would say anyway, misrepresented in the modern history and different to what they were talking about 100 years ago. The idea then was that they could not get into Wales and they were trying to take it piecemeal, and this went on for a long, long time, as we will see. And this is when I come on to the Union of Wales and England, 1535, under Henry VIII, and where that border is and which parts of Wales are actually included. Because reading this, it's not very clear. So what we do have throughout this period, let's just go through my notes rather than read all of it out. Oh yeah, there's an example, one of the ones I want to do. So it's the first time that they'd really advanced into Wales. We're getting up about 1089, 1090. And it was by invitation, where they have one Welsh prince fighting another. Now, an interesting story dealing with that period of struggle between the native chieftains and the Norman barons is related of Gwyn, Gwynn, ap Gwaedvoed, a blind and aged knight of Gwent. This story, if you remember, this was used, if you watch fantastic film, I liked it anyway, Kevin Costner just made me think of it, with the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, when his poor old father is strung up and he has to fight everybody when he's blindfold, because his castle's been taken while Robin's away. You know what, if you remember that scene. Well, this is very similar, and it's quite a terrible scene, really. In the reign of William Rufus, White Castle, Gwyn can also mean the Holy Castle and stuff, in this instance, or White Castle, Gwyn would seem to mean the Castle of Gwyn, alright? Anyway, the White Castle was held by Gwyn, and during his absence from the district, before I give the story, I don't want to keep interrupting it, but the castle was held by Gwyn, and there's loads of examples in here where the castles were already in place and held by Welsh kings, Welsh rulers. You have people like the Normans coming in and taking castles. Well, how can you take a castle if it's not already built? It's logically nonsense when you think about it. So in the reign of William Rufus, White Castle was held by Gwyn, and during his absence from the district, a Norman baron, thinking to take advantage of his age and blindness, seized the castle. On his return, Gwyn appealed to the king for permission to fight the Norman with a sword in the dark chamber in the castle tower. The king gave his consent, and the Norman, unable to see his blind opponent in the darkness, smote the air vainly with his sword until he fell before a thrust from Gwyn, who thus regained possession of the castle. Please don't come out. Please don't come out.
They still sound, don't worry.
It is from a mistranslation of his name that the castle is called White Castle. Because Gwyn is I explained this. Gwyn's a Welsh word meaning white, but Gwyn is a man's name, has another meaning, not white. So this would be Gwyn's Castle or Castell Gwyn. So there's loads of great stuff in here. I recommend the book. But it shows there was a struggle going on, an ongoing struggle. Then we got the development of the bow. Oh, that was a Welsh thing. Hey, another one that people might know about. There's I want to talk about Raglan Castle, because this came up today by complete coincidence on the Facebook group. Someone said something about Raglan Castle, and I was just reading about it in here. And to the left stands the hexagonal keep known as the Yellow Tower of Gwent, surrounded by a water moat. In spite of the serious damage to which the castle was subjected after the siege, it's still in Norman times, I think. No, we're a bit later, 1280. Described another chapter. Sufficient of his former magnificence remains in the grand staircase, great hall, fountain court, and numerous stone fireplaces to give us a good idea of the home in which the Lord of Raglan lived. So tourists have still been attracted there then, okay? Now, another thing, just to throw in again with an Irish connection, another Irish connection, it does tie in what we were saying earlier about that fort in Dublin. Much later now, we're not talking about the invasion in the 400s. Much later is when you talk then about the first invader of Ireland being Strongbow, who was the Earl of Pembroke. He married into a Welsh family, became Earl of Pembroke, and took Welsh soldiers with him to do that invasion of Ireland. Yeah, it's always known as Anglo-Norman, which is bizarre when you think about it. He's just about Norman and definitely no Anglos involved. You find a history book which talks about the Welsh-Norman invasion of Ireland. I'd love to see it, because I've never heard of it referred to as that. It's referred to as Anglo-Norman, but the Anglos, nothing to do with it. And the Normans, maybe a handful were Norman, and even them, they making their claim via marrying into Welsh royalty. Another interesting here, tying in with Rob Shaw's book, which has got mentioned there, and we're looking at what happened to Charles I and his execution, and then the Great Fire and the plagues and the banking and the law changes, all this amazing stuff that happened. There's another place there that mentions that this castle was also, in later times, for 20 years, the prison of Henry Marten, one of the judges who condemned Charles I. On his death in 1680, he was buried in the chancel of the church, but his remains were removed to the body of the church at a later date by an excessively loyal vicar. So Charles II was one of the people he's trying to track down. Right, okay, I have to jump through some of these bits here because we got another, and I know you don't read very well, but there's big print on this book. You've got a chance. And the point I want to make there, up until the 10th century, the British Church had remained maintained, I'm doing this from memory, its independence from the papacy, from the papal church. So even then, we're talking about a separate British church to the Roman church, okay? And they're still trying to push this idea. This is when, see, this must be a different David. Oh, they talk about the bishopric, about, yeah, the Archbishop of St. David's. Oh, so it's not the original David. It's another bishop. And then these bishops are getting poisoned and killed. It's going quite terribly. And then one of the areas we want to research into, and I'm hoping that someone in Italy can help us here, who might be able to ask for the Vatican libraries information on this, because this is where we get now into the charters, the land of charters, which might sound a bit dull, but in there you've got written evidence of a lot of these historical events happening and things around Arthur. There's a staff apparently gifted to Alfred, a Welsh on it. Thank you, Anthony. That would be interesting to see. Sorry, I'm getting this thing test. I can't see the comments. Yeah. Right, so in so let's read this little paragraph here because it's interesting, okay? In a previous chapter, hang on, let's just throw it one. Yeah, in a previous chapter, we have seen how the Norman barons seized the land and divided it amongst themselves. This is Welsh land now, Gwent, and a lot of the property of the Bishop of Llandaff. That bishopric was enormous, right up into Herefordshire. Whether it was the property of a Welsh peasant or prince or of the church. In the year 1108, oh my God, it's 9:20, when Urban became Bishop of Llandaff, the condition of the church in the diocese was deplorable, and he immediately set to work to maintain the rights of the church and to prevent further spoliation of church property. He found the great robbers of the church lands were Robert de Chandos, who had seized Caerleon and Goldcliff, and Walter de Clare, the baron who possessed Llanfair, Caerwent, and other places. Urban remonstrated with them in vain, and failing to move them by words, he proceeded to excommunicate them, and sought the assistance of the Pope. And then we got Pope Calixtus, gave Urban all possible assistance. To King Henry, he sent a bull commanding him to assist Urban, at the same time commanding Ralph, Archbishop of Canterbury, to see that justice was done. Right, I am going to whiz through, I don't want to do so late. So you got all those things there, the Welsh monasteries, and it confirms in here that the Welsh monasteries, like Atlantic Major, go back at least to the 6th century. And the Pope supported this role, and that's what I like to see is the, if you like, the papal bull, alright? Right, okay, enough to whiz through now. Okay, so you've got the different monasteries through Gwent, and all the things that are going on there. And now we come on to Geoffrey of Monmouth, which of course is important for us because he's the person who a lot of the British histories come from. And in here, he's treated as a proper historian in detail. There's no ridicule or anything. He explains there's some dramatic stuff added, but how the book was written and his sources and where it came from. And I just did a little... Geoffrey's history commenced a new epoch in literature, opening for all Europe the hitherto unknown and inexhaustible wealth of Celtic romance. Geoffrey of Monmouth stands at the beginning of the age of the new chivalry, wherein the knights were famous and featured chivalry, and then he goes on about the dramatic side of it. But he does talk about the historical. There's so much in this book. Then we got all about Henry II, how much time he spent in Wales, and how that was all part of the politics of the time, and how the Welsh provided the armies, knew the crucial things in the to and fro. Hang on, which one's I going to jump to? Let's do it. Hang on a second. Yep, the invention then of the Welsh longbow is mentioned in here, and how that was used to devastating effect to beat the Normans, and how the fighting was going on. Now, we're well into the 12th century now, and this idea that everywhere in Wales is just Norman just doesn't tie in with this, what was being taught 100 years ago. And there's something here about the Welsh warbow, the longbow. William de Braose testifies that one of his horse soldiers, in a fight with the Welsh, was wounded by an arrow which passed through his thigh and the armour with which the thigh was encased on both sides, and then through the saddle, mortally wounding the horse. Another soldier had his hip, also sheathed in armour, penetrated by an arrow quite to the saddle, and on turning his horse round received a similar shot in the opposite hip, which fixed him on both sides to his seat. Such splendid fighters were the men of old Gwent. What were you doing this morning, Al?
Archery.
We were doing archery this morning. I should put a picture up. We had a long bow and we had a recurve bow. Thank you to Eric, if you're watching, Eric. Thank you for introducing us with a £60 bow, and man, the power, and there's a lot of research you can do into how those arrows work. Anyway, let me go through King John, and how King John ended up in Wales a lot of his time, and the manoeuvring that went on, the politics. Simon de Montfort was in Wales, and William Marshal. These are Welsh or British armies that were being used to fight these wars. They've become famous in history, but these connections are not mentioned at all. We can go into more detail. I'd strongly urge people to get the book. Another thing which was news to me was the fact that they actually took Welsh monks to Ireland. They constantly fed this story that everything came from Ireland regards Christianity. They had William Marshal, a famous commander who fought all around Europe. And again, if you look at the film I wasn't so keen on, what's his name? The Aussie, Russell Crowe, the Russell Crowe Robin Hood film. William Marshall's a big character in that. He's very important. And he fights against when Prince Louis from France comes over. Yes, there was actually a King Louis, never seen on any Kings of England, but he was there. So William Marshal, who's the general, established the Abbey of Tintern Minor. So Tintern, the place where Tyfelt, named in honour of the king, on the River Wye. So William Marshal the Elder established the Abbey of Tintern Minor near Wexford in Ireland, Tintern Minor, which is supplied with monks from Tintern. His widow Isabella, daughter of Richard Strongbow, was buried at Tintern, as were his two youngest sons, Walter and Anselm, Dean of Salisbury, who lived only a few months to enjoy the estates in honour of the family. And then all about Simon de Montfort. Now, if you don't know Simon de Montfort, the War of the Roses, he was the kingmaker, the key guy behind a lot of this. Actually, Warwick was the kingmaker, but Simon de Montfort, key character, right? And what I wanted to do was put a map up so you can see the east of Wales, which is Gwent, and where that joins the west of England, the West Country, and Oxford's not far away. And that area is really the centre of Britain. That's the centre. That's where the battles take place. So in 1258, the barons met at Oxford, and under the leadership of Simon de Montfort told the king that they would no longer endure his misrule. A council of the barons was formed, in whose hands the government of the country was placed. Simon strove hard to maintain the rights of the people, but it was a difficult task on account of the jealousy of many of the barons. The king, urged on by the barons who remained faithful to him, resolved to make an effort to regain his power. War broke out in 1263, when Simon marched to attack the Lord's Marchers, who supported the royalist cause. The Lord Marcher were also enemies of the Welsh, and Llewellyn attacked them on the other side, and though he had entered into no friendly alliance with de Montfort. As a result of this campaign, many of the barons deserted Simon, and the royalists became the stronger party in the marches. Simon, however, marched against the main body and inflicted a crushing defeat on the royalists at Lewes in Sussex in 1264. The king and his son, Prince Edward, were taken prisoners, and Simon de Montfort became master of England. All right? Now, I've read all this stuff. That's a history I'm very interested in. But the fact that all these armies now were being raised in Wales, and that's where the key fighting was taking place, I don't know, maybe it's just my ignorance, but not something that's made a big thing of. Then you got the setting up of the early parliaments, okay? So we move on a bit further in the fighting, and of course, a lot of people have been killed and things. So Gloucester, foreseeing that this quarrel must end in warfare, left London before the parliament had broken up, and proceeded to fortify and strengthen his castles, which in this district included Newport, Usk, Monmouth, Trellick and Cardiff. He then devised a plan with Roger Mortimer to set the prince at liberty. The king and his son are being held in Wales. So he devised a plan with Roger Mortimer to set the prince at liberty. Leicester and his prisoners first came to Abergavenny and then removed to Hereford. Here some of the royalist barons were allowed to visit the prince and the whole plan. And if you don't know the story, Edward's going out for a ride every day, and one day on his good horse he bolts off, and there were some soldiers ready to set him free, and the whole war get going again. And then you go back to the wars around. Then you got Edward the First, Edward Longshanks, and the whole conversation during all this is to point out that the line of castles goes as far as Cardiff, and it's the Gwent line and the major river there. And this is a big part of it. And the other thing to note here is Wales is still a separate country. It's absolutely separate. It's not overrun by Normans. The Normans have got a border on the edge, and further in is not Norman. And the castles and that you see, quite often they are mounds rather than Motte and Bailey, or quite often they're actually Welsh castles. See how many star forts you can find. J.H. You're talking to William Marshall, an amazing life. He did. William Marshall is well worth studying. Yeah, the Battle of Gethley Gare against the Normans suffered their greatest defeat since setting foot on British soil. 2 great battles have been fought in the year 1094. Thank you, T.O.G. Derry. Yeah, there's a few battles in here. I haven't had a chance to cover them all. Where the Welsh gave some real hammerings to first of all, the Norman armies, then the English armies. And then you've got Edward struggling in Wales. Oh, you right?
Just counting the lag.
Oh, I thought you were waving at me, okay. And another castle which I'm not aware of, excellent, if you can see that, I hope you can see it, is Newport Castle. So can someone put on the comments how much of Newport Castle is still visible? Because when we were in Newport, we were asking for places to see. Remember we went that time, a couple of years ago? And we were hoping to see places of interest, and I think there's not much left there of this, is there? And that seems a terrible shame. So then you got King Edward and Edward II having particular problems. So Edward marched through Gwent and was notably entertained by the Earl of Gloucester. The fine castles in the district engaged his particular attention, especially Caerphilly, Cardiff, Newport and Chepstow. During his wanderings on the Crusades, Edward again made new ideas and new architecture. And it talks about Newport Castle. Now so Edward II then became a fugitive in Gwent. And it's in Gwent that he was captured. Right, so we've got about... one other thing I want to throw in. While we're on Edward II. It's caught my eye. Are you aware, if you've read Wilson and Blackett books, you might be, and I've mentioned it on... Okay, we're okay? We're still alive? It's not showing any viewers on here. Is it working at count? Yeah, it is. Okay, yeah. All right. Is that... Wilson and Blackett show you exactly who William Wallace is. Wallace is a corruption of Welsh. He was Welsh. And his claim to the Scottish throne goes back through Llewellyn. And if you look at the Scottish kings and the Stuarts, they claim their claim comes through the House of Gwynedd. So that's why Robert Bruce and William Wallace, and Balliol's the other one, isn't it? Those three all married into that same family and all had rival claims to the Scottish throne. Now, something which backs this up a little bit here on the same sort of subject. So Gaveston was one of the favourites there. Yeah, so he says here, Gaveston was the first favourite of King Edward II, okay? And was allowed to control the king's actions until his insolence led the barons to unite against him, and he was beheaded in 1312. So we get more recent. The death of Gaveston put an end to the jealousy of the barons for a time. 2 years later, Gilbert, followed by a number of valiant warriors from Gwent, marched with the king's army into Scotland, where he fell fighting at the Battle of Bannockburn. Gilbert advised the king not to risk a battle until his men had rested from the fatigues of their march. In a fit of temper, Edward accused him of cowardice and treachery. The unjust words stung Gilbert, and he rushed into the battle and sacrificed, in the shock of battle, the life that would have been so valuable to the king. In the disastrous Battle of Bannockburn, the one cause of pride to Southerners was the desperate stand made by Gilbert and his men. And it's an interesting little article because if you know the film Braveheart, what's his name, Mel Gibson, you'll know in there's this famous scene where I'm the King of Ireland and the Irish change sides, and it's kind of a betrayal. But if anything, that's a Welsh story. Well, again, Welsh stories don't get into films very often. Another interesting thing then was a bit later on, Lancaster, the Lord of Monmouth, collected his troops and being joined by the Earl of Hereford, declared his alliance with Scotland and advanced with the king. So I'm just going to recap that there. After Bannockburn, that's when he had this famous changing of sides and the Welsh marched against Edward I after he's supposed to have conquered Wales, which I found fascinating. So just a few more things to cover then. Let's go on to the whole thing through the War of the Roses. Just checking, I'm still on Edward II, I think so, yes. So the king fled from London to Gloucester, and hearing that the Queen was marching upon Bristol, he sent the elder Despenser to undertake its defence. The Queen besieged the city, and after a few days the garrison mutinied against Despenser, and he was handed over to his enemies, who, notwithstanding that he was nearly 90 years of age, had him immediately executed as he stood in his armour. Maybe he was afraid he'd die before they got the swords out. The Queen then marched on Gloucester, which is part of Wales in those days, remember, in pursuit of the king, but Edward and the young Despenser sought safety in flight, and at that time had crossed the Wye and stood on the threshold of Gwent. The monks at Tintern befriended him, as the monks seemed to have done everywhere, although the bishops allied themselves with the Queen. He was at Tintern October the 14th and 15th, 1326, remained in the district for a week. And then you see his pursuit around Wales and more battles that took place and end up in Hereford, and eventually had him hanged, drawn and quartered. Right, let's finish off. We got then Monmouth. Sorry, I do need to mention one more thing there. Yeah, there was a period there. No, we'll skip that bit. Too much stuff for one video already. But what it does go on to is Owen Glyndŵr. And the curious thing here is that in this period, the men of Monmouth seem to actually fight against Owen Glyndŵr. And this is worth an interesting one to follow. I'll show another fancy dress party. The goodly folk of Gwent having more fun. Alright. Oh, Arnie dear.
Yeah.
Sorry, could you ask someone to go to the car and get one of the new boxes, please? Yeah, the new boxes. I just want to show the new boxes and finish. Nothing in the box.
Oh,
Let's show the box.
boxes.
Yeah. So then we come on to the Welsh claim to the throne through the Tudors, and the thing I want to get to finish this is the 1536 Act of Union. Sorry, it's a Black William. The Civil War in Gwent. All this is massive. Let's make sure I get the right pages. Oh yeah. So Wales is still independent. Owen Glyndŵr, there was an independent Welsh Parliament. The Civil War, all over Wales, okay? And we're talking then both Civil Wars, really. The War of the Roses, and then the later Civil War with Charles and all that kind of stuff. Hang on, where's my Act of Union? Sorry, I'm trying up here. There's so many notes, so much to do. I just realised this could have gone for... page 191. Page 191. Interesting paragraph to finish. The coming of the Tudors brought about many changes in Wales. The Welsh were filled with hope on the accession of Henry VII. They had put him on the throne as a Welshman, descended from their own ancient kings, and his reign marks the commencement of a brighter period for Wales in the Marches. The Council of Wales, which was introduced as a temporary court, he made permanent, but the court seems to have been by no means efficient in putting down the abuses of the Lords Marcher system, or able to make punishment swift and certain. It is not until the latter years of Henry VIII's reign that legislative measures were undertaken to improve the political and judicial organisation of this part of Wales. In the year 1535 was passed the Act of Union between England and Wales. The power of the Lords Marcher was abolished by it, and their lands were divided to form 5 new shires. The 24 lordships lie between the Rumney and the Wye, united to form Monmouthshire. So that's East Wales, okay? Which is attached to the Oxford Circus for law purposes. Thank you. Our own poet wrote in one of his poems, "Wild Wales, also thou Monmouth dear, thy name alone hast changed," from Gwent. Now, what I wanted to show is this little table there. Again, I should have put these up. Might as well try and add graphics later, if I can work out how to do that. But you want to look at this little table here. I'll read it anyway. What that's showing is the new counties, if you like, as part of the Union, which is part of Wales, which is now part of... Well, there's loads of good information on the comments. I hope people read those when they watch the video, okay? So the Northern Division... So I'm trying to work out, Jeff, this means this is the only part of Wales. That's what it seems to give. The Act of Parliament related to the Principality now include Monmouthshire as well. So the Act of 1535 conferred upon the newly formed county... I might have got this wrong. To send 3 members to represent the people in Parliament.
Oh, someone said your channel audio as a podcast would be really good.
Okay, I don't know how to do that, but I should look into it. Thank you. By a later Act of Parliament, the number was increased to 4. So this is how Gwent was represented. You got the Northern Division, include Abergavenny, Pontypool and Skenfrith. Western Division, District of Bedwellty. The Southern Division, including Caerleon, Chepstow, Christchurch, Raglan, Trelech, Bedwas and Mynydd Islwyn. So that video I was going to show, Mynydd Islwyn, is... It might seem very insignificant now, but it actually warrants its own special name there. And you notice that I know Neil Kinnock's old borough in Caerphilly and that is called Islwyn. So it all seemed to be that mound, and I will get the video up tomorrow, if not tonight even, because I've already done the editing, where you do the visit there, is more important than made out. Anyway, the book goes on into more recent, more up-to-date times. Isn't it fantastic? It's absolutely fantastic. You know all about the towns and then the industry and all that kind of stuff. It's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. And I haven't even covered everything. Oh, I didn't mention the Welsh long... Oh, I did, yeah, the Welsh longbow. Oh, yeah, Edward II was... I'm just going to go through my notes I made. Yeah, the lead up to... A couple of points I did miss, so just want to make sure they get a mention, was the pressure and the build-up to the signing... Sorry, I keep licking my lips. I'm very dry. My fingers. Yeah, that was leading up to the actual build-up to the Magna Carta. Came from pressure using the armies from the area of South Wales. Done the Battle of Bannockburn and the Welsh changing sides and all that stuff. Oh, Henry V. There was one more. One more I want to mention. Is it the connections there with Owen Glendower and that? They came into the battles with Henry V and Henry IV. They actually had them at their mercy at one point. And you have Henry V, who was present at the Battle of Shrewsbury in 1403, where he's wounded in the face by an arrow. I think people are aware of this, because you look at all the pictures of the kings of England. They're all front on apart from Henry. Side on, because he had this terrible gash. The following year, he's appointed Lieutenant of the Marches and was sent into Wales and his father to put down the rebellion under Owen Glendower. Unlike the fighting princes of Gwynedd, Owen Glendower had not been taught to regard the sword before all else. And his love of learning and... that's great. And all the stuff about Henry V and the battles he lost against the Welsh as well. So, I remember what I was supposed to mention about Henry V now. Sorry. What it does mention in this book as well is then how the Battle of Agincourt, how many famous people like David Gamm and people like that were there protecting Henry V, keeping him alive, and they were the ones knighted, giving their lives to win the battle. It was a big part of the battle. Alright, but anyway, enough of that. I hope you rather disrupted run through. Well, loads of comments and that. I think it's going okay. Have you thought about uploading the audio as a podcast? Okay, thank you. I might try and do that. Yeah, because there are no pictures anyway, were there?
Mighty Mr. Ronson.
The mighty Mr. Ronson. Oh yeah, the mighty Mr. Ronson. Yeah, more guests, yes. Isloin is Illid. Well, Anthony, if you want to say more about that, that would be good. And I do want to get more guests on as well. But this week, a lot of people have been asking about the story of Gwent. And I really want to cover it. And do some other parts. Yes, we are back. Hello, Monica. Right, okay. So there's a quick update on some other things that have been happening. The good news is there are beautiful boxes for the Gwent game are back. I can see, you can see that on the screen, so that's rather nice. These are lovely quality boxes. So the games are all there, the pieces, everything now. We have some upgraded boards which should go in there. So they're going to be excellent. What else we got to mention? Oh yeah, the book Architecture Powers going through, along with the other books. Loads going on, so make sure you visit the website. Remember to support. And thank you, Lodestar Leo. And thanks to all the emails and that I've been having. I'm starting to catch up. It's been a shockingly busy few weeks, and things hopefully now with Rob's book out and a few other things done. The Cymroglyphic second edition is almost ready to go to print. The game's done. A few other projects. Start to spend a bit more time. Be a little bit more organised on the video. So thank you for bearing with me. And as we try to get this all together. It's my island. Yes, that was the quote from the film, wasn't it? So what I really wanted to do was point out that what we're doing in this Britain's Hidden History group, and needs more and more people to get involved, and people are, like Bob has sent through a full article there about the British or Roman castle in Ireland, which I'll put together as a video. People like Dixie have sent me loads of information, and people are getting involved. One thing I would like to ask people to do is, at the moment, I don't know all the details, but there is a movement going on in the Welsh Assembly to make Welsh history a compulsory part of the curriculum in the schools, which would seem an excellent idea. I dread to think what version of Welsh history they're going to be promoting, but there you go. It's 20 to 10. It's way too late. I can hear Arnie's yawning. He's got school tomorrow. Oh yeah, they've got the Kibble map, loads of things. All right, so let's really smoothly segue away now. No, it's not letting me smoothly segue away, is it? So, thank you very much for your patience going through all that. And let's go out with this one, I think. And until the next time, with my very best wishes, Heddwch. Enjoy the music. I'll keep the chat open a little bit longer. I can see people are having good conversations there. And what should we leave up as an image? We can see a little bit of this. Hopefully you can see a bit of that. This is this fort which doesn't exist just south of Dublin. Alright, so good night for me. Good night for you all. No starry key. Well vowed. Goodbye. That's all working perfectly now we've finished. Isn't it great? Look, it's running really fast. There's no lag. Sounds great. What can you do, eh? Oh, we'll try again next week anyway. Alright, so that was 6 months. That's 26 episodes. 6 months of episodes. Wow. Where did 6 months go, eh? And I hope everyone enjoyed it. Heddwch. I pressed the right button. No, I haven't. What a clown. Come on. Yay, there we go.